उमज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति सुपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्ण पादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी शुभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले शंकराधानाथ स्वामी विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नामने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारणे निर्विशेष कम करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवं श्री चैतन्य ईश्वरम्। हरि ओम तत्सत्। हरे कृष्ण। So welcome back to the discussion of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We are discussing the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita entitled Attaining the Supreme. So we started our journey on this chapter in the last class, and this chapter is triggered by a host of questions on various terms which Krishna used towards the end of the 7th chapter. And the first two verses of the 8th chapter are those 8 odd questions, 8 or 9 questions. Kim tad brahma, kim adhyatmam, kim karma, what is Adibhut, what is Adi Daiva, what is Adi Yajna. And finally, the most important question is how those who are self-controlled, the practitioners of yoga, how they can understand me at the time of death. Because death is the critical point or juncture of transition. So like we discussed in the last class how the Lord answers the questions very succinctly. And then he comes to the last question. And in fact, most of the chapter, the remaining part of the chapter is actually focused on the last verse. Sorry, the last question that Arjuna has brought up. Because that deserves a very elaborate discussion. It's a very beautiful question. How can one ensure that at the time of death, the yogi can attain to the supreme destination? How he can know you is what Arjuna is asking. So we also discussed in the last class, Krishna gives the essential principle of what determines one's destination at the time of death. And Krishna explains that in the very beautiful verse, Antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram iha prayati samadbhavam yati nasti atra samshaya. There is no doubt, Arjun, he who quits his body remembering me alone, mama eva, eva means exclusively. Not that they are focused on many things and I am one of them, but if they are exclusively focused on me, one will attain me without a doubt. In fact, Krishna explains the universal principle by saying that it is not just about remembering me, but whatever state of mind one may have at the time of death, that state of mind one will attain without fail. So if one is absorbed in me, he will attain me. If he is absorbed in something else, he will attain something accordingly. So it's very important how one leaves this world. And also Krishna hints in verse 6, Krishna says that what a person will think at the time of death is also not an accident. It's also not something which one can plan and put a reminder on the phone, and when the reminder beeps, chant Hare Krishna, one will chant and go back to Godhead. No. There is so much turmoil at the moment of death, both in the physical body as well as the mind, that naturally one becomes absorbed in that state of consciousness that one has actually absorbed himself in for the major part of his life. Essentially, at the time of death, the consciousness or the absorption is equal to summation of all the delta consciousness across all the moments in one's life. So if the net summation happens to be positive impression of Krishna consciousness, then the mind will become absorbed accordingly, and one's next destination will be like that. Of course, it is not just a moment of how much time one has spent in spiritual life, because one may say, oh, what if I came to spiritual life when I was 60 years of age? For example, I'm just mentioning. So 60 years I was not spiritual consciousness. So does it mean now whatever I do, if I'm going to live another 20 years, does it mean whatever I'm going to do anyway, it is going to be 20 upon 80? So it is only going to be 25% at best. Does it mean I have no hope? No, it is not a. It is not just about time. It is about intensity. It's a weighted measure of your absorption. Even one intense moment of intense absorption and attachment can sway the equation in the direction of a spiritual destination. That is the power of deep attachment and absorption. In fact, just now we had the Jagannath Rath Yatra. The last couple of days, hopefully you all had the beautiful darshan of Lord Jagannath, the beautiful live telecast. I spent most of the day seeing the live telecast on Doordarshan. It's very beautiful, very absorbing, and also because it was not so crowded, it was so much easier to see and follow. So it is said about Lord Jagannath and Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra that whoever participates or whoever sees Lord Jagannath on the Rath, Jagannath is so attractive and it is actually such a beautiful experience if one approaches it in the right consciousness, that it is so profoundly impacting one's consciousness that even that few moments spent in seeing Lord Jagannath in front of the Ratha cart, if they are with intense absorption, it is said at the time of death, when the movie of one's life, it is said when the time of death comes, the whole life flashes before one's eyes, like a fast forward movie within a few moments. Everything that you have done, all the sins, all the mistakes, all the frustrations, all the joys, all the happiness, all the seva, everything will flash. And that is how that sum total comes in a short time. The whole thing flashes. And many have mentioned this, even those who are not from our spiritual traditions, many who have gone and somehow come back. Those who have had near-death experiences, many of them have reported that, yes, The whole life flashes in front of the eye. So this is not just some imagination. There is some empirical evidence to that effect also, as reported by those who have experienced it. So it is said that when that movie is flashing, if one has been fortunate enough to see Lord Jagannath on the Rath and pull him and behold him, because that is such an overwhelmingly intense experience, that when the movie of the life comes to that frame in one's life, and one sees Lord Jagannath, which is big eyes, they said the movie will suddenly pause. The frame will get stuck at that point because that's such an intense experience. The mind will get so attracted and attached to that frame that the movie will not move forward. We become absorbed in seeing that form of Lord Jagannath. And in that absorbed consciousness, one will leave his body and attain to the supreme destination. So one should not underestimate the potencies of some of these intense experiences in connection to the Lord and his devotees. In fact, some of these experiences that we sometimes get blessed with are so deeply influencing our soul, our life, that even some of these moments are so relishable and treasurable that they help us overcome all difficulties throughout our whole life. Imagine if once Jagannath looks at us and smiles. If once Krishna looks at us and smiles. Can you imagine what will be the impact that it will have? That one moment. It is immensely profound, that experience. And that one smile from the Lord, yogis wait for many, many lifetimes to get that one smile. Once you get that one smile, Prabhupada said, once Krishna smiles at you, then, essentially your life is perfected. Is it easy to get Krishna to smile at you? Is it? It is not at all easy. Because nothing can buy Krishna's smile. No amount of austerities, no amount of punyas, no amount of vratas. It's only pure devotion. When Krishna sees our humble, sincere devotion and our humble, sincere desire to please him and his devotees, then he will smile. And many devotees have seen Krishna smiling like that. Of course, sometimes we may imagine Krishna is smiling at me. But usually, when the Lord will actually smile, he will also ensure that there is some other corroborative evidence to make us understand that yes, this is indeed him reciprocating with us. Otherwise, we'll try to look at his face, trying to extract a smile from his face. Please don't try to do that. But when he does, you will know. How you will know? I don't have to tell you how you will know. You will know. Because nobody needs to tell you when it actually happens. Prabhupada was once asked how you will know. Not about the smile of Krishna, but in general. When it happens, it is so overwhelmingly a transcendental experience that nobody needs to explain. Just like when we actually eat food, healthy, nutritious food, when we eat, the whole body becomes nourished and satisfied. Isn't it? Let's say you're very hungry and somebody brings a beautiful plate of nice hot prasadam, which is just the right taste and fresh, just offered. You're eating it. As you're eating it, how satisfying it is to the body and the mind. We all know, right? At least that experience we have all had. Does anybody have to come and tell us, Prabhu, now you are feeling satisfied, huh? Prabhu, you are feeling satisfied? No, because that is our own experience. When we experience it like that, we do not need that. Experience itself is uh, undeniable. So, of course, intense spiritual experiences are such that having had which, one doesn't need to speculate. If one has to speculate, then that means it's probably not a spiritual experience actually. We have been imagining things. Anyway, but the point is, coming back, the point is, why we are mentioning this is that the depth of some of these experiences can be so profound that it doesn't matter really necessarily how much time one has spent. Of course, time is an important consideration, but if the depth is there towards the end of one's life, that depth can overwhelmingly overshadow even decades and decades of material experience. That's why the gopis of Vrindavan say, this is a prayer, actually it's written by Rupa Goswami, who was praying in the mood of the gopis. He says, if you have any attraction to material life, to home, wealth, family, material enjoyment, then please don't go to the bank of the Keshi Ghat. Please don't go there. Why? Because there, if you will see this bluish colored boy, even once, standing on the bank of the Yamuna, his threefold bending form, playing on the flute at Bamsivat, near the bank of the Yamuna, you'll go so mad. It will be such an intense experience of attraction for you that you will forget everything else. So I'm just giving you some examples. The essential point is that spiritual experience can be so deep that sometimes some moments of this experience can be intensely overwhelming and have an intense impact on the soul. And that is why, as the movie of the life is playing in front of our eyes, as we are passing away, these moments will push us. The sight of these beautiful absorptions will push us into an intense mood of remembrance of the Lord. So it's very important, all these experiences. That is why we go for yatras. That is why we make the effort to go to Puri, Vrindavan, Mayapur. That is the reason why we want to participate in festivals, associate with sadhus. All these moments have a very profound, deep impact on our soul. And all this will help us cross the tipping point so that at the moment of death, we can be on the positive side rather than the negative. So Krishna is saying that this is not a matter of chance, but rather a matter of practice. So the essential message Krishna is giving is, again, I'm just recapping. I have given some examples, but we are still essentially summarizing this very important point that Krishna is saying there is no other way other than practice. This cannot be left to chance. This cannot be planned and reasoned out at the time of death. So what you do is what will determine your consciousness at the time of death, and what you absorb yourself in the time of death will determine your destination. And that is why, Arjun, you think of me always, but I don't want you to give up all the other duties and think of me sitting in one place. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mama anusmara yuddhacha mayyarpita mano buddhir mamai vaishyatya samshaya. You will attend me without a doubt by being absorbed. Your mind and intelligence being absorbed in me. How? Your mind and intelligence will be absorbed. The most practical way of absorbing the mind and intelligence is to work for Krishna. When you dedicate your energies, and that is why seva is so important, when we dedicate our body, mind, energies, resources to serve the Lord, that way, mano buddhir. That's why Krishna says in verse 7 that Mama anusmara yuddhyacha. You remember me and fight. Don't simply fight. Remember me and fight, which means do not lose sight of the purpose for what you are fighting. And what is the purpose? To follow my instruction. That's the simple purpose. If you fight like that, you will always be absorbed in me, and because you'll be absorbed in me, you will attain me without a fail. That is a practical service is very important, because sometimes, because of our lack of advancement, simply doing sadhana, we cannot be doing sadhana all the time throughout the day. So we have to find some practical engagement for the senses. So this is the practical message Krishna is giving. And Krishna emphasizes that, O Parth, such a person who meditates on me as the Supreme Lord, with his mind continuously absorbed, who never deviates from this path, he is sure to reach me. So far, the Lord has essentially summarized by explaining to Arjun that it is about full absorption in me at the time of death. Then Krishna will now go on to explain to Arjuna in the rest of the chapter how it can be possible to remember him at the time of death. So far, Krishna hasn't explained. So far, Krishna has said whatever you're absorbed in. So, what is that process? Is there a process to help us to be able to remember him at the time of death? So, Krishna explains two processes by which one can remember him at the time of death. One is the process of yoga, of course, mixed with bhakti, because without bhakti, there's no question of remembering the Lord. And then Krishna will speak about the pure devotees and how they are able to remember him at the time of death. So that is what he will be covering over the next 5-6 verses. So Krishna first, because the context is that of yoga. Sixth chapter was about yoga and yogis and the process of yoga. And now in the 8th chapter, the question is about how the yogi will be able to remember him and understand him at the time of death. Krishna first explains to Arjuna how this remembrance at the time of death can be achieved by a Ashtanga. So first thing in 8.9, let us start reciting the verses from here onwards. See, I don't know whether I recited 8 or not, so never mind, let us recite. Verse 8 as well. I think we didn't recite. Verse 8 is Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena Chetasana Paramam Purusham Divyam Yati Parthanu Chintayan. Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. Abhyas means practice. Abhyasa Yoga Yukta. This is not something which you can just understand theoretically and do. Huh? When I was younger, when I was in school, whenever I used to study maths, I was very lazy in studying maths. So all I would do is I would read the textbook of mathematics and try to understand how to solve the problem. Then my mother said, "Did you study?" I said, yes, I have studied. Then mother said, "Oh, show where you have solved the problems." I don't know. I read through all the chapter and I read through some of the examples. Now I can do. But she still says, no, learning maths means you have to practice. You have to solve problems. You have to solve, do it. Because sometimes when you start solving, then you realize whether you actually understood or not understood. That is when it starts going inside. Abhyasa yoga. Yuktena chetasana annagamina. Na anyagamina. Not allowing the mind to be distracted to other things. Paramam Purusham Divyam, the transcendental Supreme Lord. Anuchintayan, remembering him. Yati, Parth. O Parth, a person attains the Supreme Personality of Godhead, transcendental, by being absorbed like this. And then he explains to Arjuna how the yogi can actually conceive, because he's talking about thinking, thinking, thinking. But how should the yogi conceive of him? What are the qualities? What are the attributes of the Lord, the spiritual attributes of the Lord that the yogi must contemplate as he is thinking of him? So in 8.9, the Lord explains. Kavim Puranam Anushasitaram Anor Aniyamsam Anusmaredyah Sarvasya Dhataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasapparastat. Very beautiful verse. Kavim Puranam Anushasitaram. Who's Kavi? The one who knows everything, past, present, future. Puranam, the oldest person. Anushasitaram, the controller of everyone. Anor Aniyams, the smaller of the smallest. Anusmaredya. Anusmaredya means he who remembers me like this. Sarvasya Dhataram. Dhataram means he who maintains everyone. Achintya Rupam, he who has a transcendental, spiritual, beautiful form, which is effulgent like Aditya sun, Aditya Varnam, Tamasaha Parastat, and it is not material, it is beyond material existence. Tamasaha Parastat. That is how I must be remembered. So then the Lord starts explaining the process to Arjuna, the technicalities of the process, of course, summarily, without going into too much detail. So he explains here what is commonly known in the Ashtanga Yoga system as the Shata Chakra Yoga. Shata Chakra Yoga means there are different chakras. Chakras are said to be energy points within the body where certain nerves come and collate together. So the yogis use that as a means to raise one's consciousness higher and to be able to be absorbed in transcendence. They make use of the prana and they focus the prana energy in various chakras and gradually elevate it higher and higher and higher. So Krishna explains in verse 10, Prayana kale manasa chalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva hruvor madhye pranam avesha samyak satam param purusham upaiti divyam. Who will attain that transcendental person? One who at the time of death fixes his life air, the prana, between the eyebrows, and with the strength of yoga, with an undeviating mind, engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord with full devotion, he will certainly attain the Supreme Lord. So, what is the different thing that he's saying here? The main ingredient is still here, that without deviation, one is absorbed in thinking of the Supreme with full devotion. That Krishna had already mentioned earlier also, right? Antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram. So what is it that Krishna is saying here specifically? Additionally, Krishna is saying that because Ashtanga Yoga is a mechanical process, usually, like we discussed, at the time of death, the body and the mind go into so much turmoil. But the yogi, by training and practice, is able to control his mind and his life air to the point to bring it here, so that at the time of death, he can actually leave this body with his mind fully focused. So that Shata Chakra Yoga and that practice of bringing the life air to the point of the middle of the eyebrows allows one to have the necessary absorption in the Supreme, which normally would be extremely difficult for any ordinary person at the time of death. So this is what it is essentially doing. Because when one controls the breath and the prana, one controls the mind. That is the subtle science. That is why yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. Prana ayama, controlling the pranavayu. Our entire body is being run because of the pancha prana. And when the pranas become controlled, the bodily functions become controlled, the mind becomes controlled. That is how yoga approaches it. Ashtanga yoga approaches it. The ultimate goal is still the same. The ultimate goal is to be always absorbed in the Lord. But how to remove all the distracting elements and how to tune the body, mind, breath apparatus in such a way that that absorption is possible is the process of yoga. And this is the system. Prayana kale manasa chalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva dhruvor madhye pranam aveshya samyak satam param purusham upaiti divya. One will certainly achieve the Lord if one is able to do that. And the time of death, as the yogi is leaving his body, what he's supposed to do? The next verse, the Lord says, he must chant Om, the sacred syllable, the topmost combination of all letters, and leave his body. Bring the pranavayu here, chant Om, fully absorb in the Lord and leave. Typically, such yogis will depart from the top of the head. The prana will rupture from the scalp and the soul will leave from the scalp rather than leaving through any other parts of the body. Yadaksharam Veda Vido Vadanti Vishanti Yad Yatayo Vitaragaha Yad Icchanto Brahmacharyam Charanti Tatte Padam Sangrahena Pravakshe. I will explain to you briefly this process, Arjuna is saying. Sorry, Krishna is telling Arjuna. By which persons who are learned in the Vedas, who utter Omkar, who are renowned sannyasis, how they enter into the spiritual realm, how they enter into Brahman. The Lord here is using the word Aksharam for Om, and he is using the word Yat Aksharam Veda Vida Vadanti Vishanti Yat. They enter into the transcendental truth. Now here, the Lord is being broader in inclusion in terms of the destination. Krishna is accommodating all kinds of yogis here in the sense that all those who enter into the transcendental realm. So those could be yogis who have Brahman realization, yogis who have Paramatma realization, and the devotees who have spiritual realization. That's why it says enters into the truth. But here, of course, he is referring more commonly in this specific verse to the yogis who are not devotees but rather attracted to either Brahman or Paramatma. And those who want to achieve a transcendental position to matter, such yogis who are learned in the Vedas, who are uttering Omkar, they are in the renounced order, they practice celibacy. And he says, I will explain to you now how such people are able to remember him. Sarvadvarani sanyamya manoridi nirudhyacha murdni adhayatmana pranam astito yoga dharanam. The yogi becomes detached from all sensual engagements. He closes all the doors of all the senses, fixes his mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head, and establishes himself in yoga. Krishna is explaining what he has mentioned in 8.9 a bit more elaborately here, where he is saying what is that system by which one can become absorbed in transcendence at the time of the death. The yogi has already performed dharana and perfected the previous stages of pratyahara and dharana, by which one becomes detached. One disengages senses from outside and goes inward. All the doors of the senses are closed. Those who have studied the system of pratyahara in yoga will know that there are very interesting ways in which the senses can be closed from an outer engagement. We don't have time to go into that now. You can explore that if you want. So the yogi does that. He doesn't want to be distracted by any sound, by any smell, by any sight. So closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart, the life air is raised to the top of the head. And in that way, one establishes himself in yoga. What does it mean, establishes himself in yoga? To be established in yoga means to be established in connection with the Lord. Om ittekaksharam brahma vyaharan mam anusmaran yah prayati yajjandeham sayati paramam gatim. Having been situated in this state, he who chants the transcendental syllable Om, which is non-different from the Supreme Absolute Truth, and thinks of me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and leaves his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual realm. Yah prayati, Tejandeham, Sayati Paramam Gatim, the supreme destination. Note that so far Krishna is still speaking of the Ashtanga Yogi. This is Bhakti Mishra Yoga. Mainly yoga process, but there is some bhakti also, because without bhakti one cannot achieve the transcendental realm. So far Krishna has explained how the yogis will attain him at the time of death. So what we have discussed so far, the last 4-5 verses, Krishna is saying, yes, the Ashtanga yogis have to also be absorbed in me at the time of death. So the system of their absorption is, first of all through their life, they must be learned in the Vedas, expert in chanting Om. They must be expert in Pratyahar, Dharana. And then having practiced Brahmacharya and having been able to control the senses, they are able to meditate and bring the concentrate on the prana in the heart and then raise it gradually up to the space between the eyebrows. And at that point, one is able to remember and absorb fully in the Supreme Lord with full devotion and chant Om and leave. There is in the Bhaktivedanta BBT pictures, there's one picture of a yogi leaving the body like that. I don't know, he's very skinny, long hair. I don't know whether you have seen that picture. Sitting in a meditative posture like this in a jungle, in a very reclusive place. I used to love that picture a lot. He brings, and then the prana as well as the soul leaves from here and it goes to the planets. In fact, it is said with this process, the yogi can, if he wants, even if he doesn't want to go to Vaikuntha, if he wants to go to Brahmaloka, whichever loka he wants to go, he can think of it and he can go there. But of course, those who are intelligent yogis will want to go to the Supreme Paramam Gatim. So those who get absorbed in the Supreme Lord, they go to Paramam Gatim. They get absorbed in something else, they will attain that. So whatever they want, they can attain. That is the perfection of yoga practice. Having said that, Krishna now talks about how the process will apply to a bhakti yogi. So this is something good because Krishna has not left us out. You must be thinking, oh, this is very difficult. I didn't even understand what Krishna spoke in these few verses. What is this life air? What is this bringing up and fixing it between the eyebrows? The only thing I know fixing between the eyebrows is my tilak and my spectacles and my whatever else. I don't know how to fix the life air in between the eyebrows. What does that even mean? Most of us cannot even imagine. So no need to bother too much about it because that is not our process anyways. And anyway, even if you want to learn that process, we have to go to somebody who's expert in that process. And none of us here are experts in that process. So let's not go in that direction. But Krishna is very explicit in verse 8.14, where Krishna is explaining how the pure devotees who have no other desire other than serving and pleasing the Lord, how they are able to transcend at the time of death. So very beautiful, Krishna explains. Ananyachetaha satatam yomam smarti nityashah tasyaham sulabha partha nitya yuktasya yoginah. Now, upfront, I mean, earlier verses, Krishna, whatever process he described, that sounded quite difficult. In this verse, Krishna says, but for those who are my devotees, who are always remembering me, Ananya Chetaha Satatam, Yomam Smarati Nityasha, who is always remembering me, whatever he is doing, with love and affection, contemplating on me, Tasyaham Sulabha Partha, for him, no need for so much trouble. I am very easy to attain for such a person because he is constantly absorbed in me through the process of bhakti. So the pure devotee who is always absorbed in bhakti, Krishna is saying all this gymnastics of yoga is unnecessary. Very easy for him because he is always absorbed in serving me with love and devotion. The pure devotee does not need a mechanical means to remember him at the time of death. By virtue of his lifelong devotion or his intense absorption in me for whatever period, naturally at the time of death, he is able to, without difficulty, able to remember me even without having practiced all this control of the life air, raising it to the middle of the eyebrows. All these things are not important. But what is important? Ananya chetaha satatam. He desires nothing but Krishna, is always absorbed in Krishna. Such a nishkama devotee. Nishkama means he has no material desire. Usually, whether one is a jnani, a karmi, or an ashtanga yogi, they all have some interest. Either they want siddhi, or they want jnana, they want liberation, or they want to be recognized as great yogis. They want to display mystic powers. But Krishna's pure devotee has no interest in any other thing other than pleasing the Lord. So he who is unflinchingly devoted to the Lord says, such a person, it is very easy to attain him. In fact, Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad Gita, Dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mampayanti. Those who are always engaged in my service, I give them intelligence by which they can come to me. And I help them. Tesham aham samuddarta mrityu samsara vartmani bhavamina achirat parthamaya veshita chetasam. Those whose minds are absorbed in me, I become the swift deliverer. So Krishna is saying this. We had an elaborate discussion on this some time ago. Again, reiterating this point that Krishna is again emphasizing that he himself takes the responsibility of deliverance of such a devotee. Of course, by his natural affection, the devotee naturally remembers the Lord at the time of death, but for whatever reason, because of some unexpected circumstances or whatever, the Lord will still do the necessary to facilitate and adjust situations in such a way that the devotee can come to him at the time of death. That is the special protection of the Lord. You might recollect that very special episode we have discussed many times, where one very great devotee of the Lord, as he is fanning Lord Varadaraj, he asked this question to the Lord, "Oh Lord, if a devotee of yours forgets to remember you at the time of death, what will happen to him?" Yeah, because you have to remember, oh Lord, he's fanning the Lord and asking this question. What will happen? And he was able to talk to the deities, and the deities would talk back to him. And Lord Varadaraj thought for a moment. Then he said, if my devotee is unable to remember me at the time of death for whatever reason, and I will remember my devotee. What does that mean? Which means the Lord will force himself into the mind of the devotee, even though because of some situation, for example, the situation may be a sudden death, maybe a violent death, it may be such a intense bodily trauma or a mental trauma that it may be very difficult for the devotee, even for advanced souls sometimes, to be able to fix their mind on the Lord without deviation. So the Lord says, no need to worry. I am the insurance policy. Any disaster, I will manage it. The devotees normally will remember me at the time of death because of their attachment to me. But even if for some reason that happens to be a challenge, no worries. Because for the devotees, their reliance is not on the mechanical process. Their reliance is on my grace. And Krishna reciprocates. Because bhakti, what is bhakti about? Bhakti is the yoga of depending on the Lord. That is what Sharanagati is about, surrender is about. Of course, depending on the Lord doesn't mean that the devotee doesn't do anything. The devotee puts all his efforts, but he knows that the results of those efforts will depend on the Lord's grace, not on his own efforts. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu tada. You have the right to perform your duties, but not to the fruits thereof. So those who are always and regularly remembering him by chanting the holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Those who are reading the Gita, Bhagavad, those who are worshipping the Lord, having prasad, rendering different forms of services to the Lord. Regularly, we may not be immediately always, but at least we can be regular to start with. There are two words, Satatam and Nityasha. Satatam means without a pause. Satatam is a very high stage. But even before we reach Satatam, at least we can be Nityasha. Nityasha means in a disciplined way, regularly. Every day chanting 16 rounds. Every day being absorbed in hearing and chanting. Then it will become easy to remember the Lord. Because the Lord never forgets his devotee. So in this way, the Lord summarizes these two processes, and for this pure devotee who remembers Krishna personally with love, Krishna mentions a very special destination, because even within the realm of spiritual attainment, even of the yogis, some of the yogis may even attain Brahma Jyoti. Some may go to Vaikuntha. Not all yogis who attain the transcendental realm necessarily develop a pure personal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Again, it depends on the aspiration of the yogis. So Krishna says in 8.15, Mam upetya punarjanma dukkhalayam ashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmanaha sansiddhim paramam gataha. Having attained me, the great souls, mahatmanaha, those who are absorbed in devotion to me, they never again come back to this material world, Arjun, because they achieve the supreme destination, which is my supreme abode. They attain the highest perfection. Sansiddhi means the perfection. Paramam gata, the supreme perfection. Sansiddhim paramam gata. That supreme perfection is such that having attained which, one never loses it. Having gone where, one never returns. So Krishna wants to emphasize that this is the threshold. Once you cross, there is no ever coming back. Mam upetya punarjanma Dukhalayam ashashvatam. This world is what? Dukhalayam ashashvatam. This is where Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita refers to the material world as Dukhalaya. So this is Krishna's certificate. Correct? In Malaysia, we have this common thing where many food products, they will have a halal certification on it. Halal. In India, there is this green circle, vegetarian, or there's a green V mark, vegetarian, certified. So there are certain special stamps. So Krishna in this verse is stamping the material world as certified with two things. Dukhalaya, ashashvat. Ashashvat means temporary. Even if you get something which you may think is auspicious, it will not last long. It will go away very soon. And most of the time, what you will have? Dukhalaya, the abode of misery. Not sometimes misery, abode of misery. Within the abode of misery, you may get a little bit streaks of little bit of material happiness here and there. But the overwhelming factor, the overwhelming experience is dukkha. That is why dukkhalaya. Why are the snow-capped mountains in North India called Himalaya? Himalaya, the abode of snow, because practically everywhere you will see snow. Why is a library called Pustakalaya? It is the abode of books. Everywhere books, 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 books. Pustakalaya. So what is the meaning of Dukkhalaya? Everywhere there is dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. Here dukkha, there dukkha. You run from one place, you think, oh, India is problematic, let me run to Malaysia, and I'll be happy. Malaysia also dukkha. Then you say, oh, Malaysia not good, I'll go to Australia, migrate there. Then there I'll be happy in Australia. You get misery there also. Then you say, no, no, Australia wasn't good enough. US is best. Then you go to US, and then you think, no, no, probably India was the best, where I started from. But the point is, even if you go back to India, it will still be the same because you're in Dukkhalayam. Just by changing from one room to another within the material world, the situation doesn't change because the same rules apply no matter where we go. Brahma Bhuvana Loka Punaravartino Arjuna Mam Upetyatu Kaunteya Narjanma Navidyate. Anywhere you go from the topmost to the lowest planet are places of birth, old age, disease, and death. Only if you attain my abode, Arjun, there is no coming back. The same thing is being resonated here. Napnuvanti Mahatmanah Samsiddhim Paramam Gataha. Those who attain that supreme destination, they never come back and take birth in this Dukkhalayam or Shashvatam. So Krishna is giving the certificate. He is giving certificate for the material world and he is giving also certificate for the spiritual world. 100% product satisfaction guarantee. Once you go there, you never want to come. What does that mean? It's not that you are locked into the spiritual world. Now you cannot come out. It's not like a jail. Not like a jail. You are locked now. Now you can't come. Once there's a very beautiful story. Once Prabhupada, this is in the early days, Prabhupada was trying to preach Krishna consciousness. This is even before he founded ISKCON. He had written a book, Easy Journey to Other Planets. So he was going on the, I don't know which place in India it was, he was going on the streets trying to distribute his books. So he saw one Indian gentleman and he came to him and he said, please take this book. This was in Jhansi, sorry. Jhansi or Meerut, I think it was Jhansi. Very beautiful story. Prabhupada gave him that book. And that person, what is this book about? Prabhupada told him, when you read this book, you can be able to achieve and go to Goloka Vrindavan, the spiritual world. Person heard. And he asked Prabhupada, so after going to Golok Vrindavan, after reading this book, can I come back to Jhansi? I don't mind going there, but I want to come back. Prabhupada said, no. Yad gatva na nivartante. Having gone where, one never comes back. Oh, then I don't want to go there. Then you take the book back. I don't want to go to Goloka Vrindavan. If I can't come back to Jhansi, what is the point? So this is our problem. The problem is actually we don't want to go. So Krishna is just facilitating our desire. Some people try to blame the Lord. Oh, why I'm in the material world? Why I'm not in the spiritual world? It's not Krishna's problem. It is our problem. We have made the choice. We are conveniently blaming God for it. No, we made the choice to be here. So now we have to consciously make the choice to not be here and be in the spiritual world. So nobody is locked in the spiritual world, but spiritual world is so beautiful. It is Sat Chit Ananda. It is not Dukkhalayama Shashvatam. So whoever goes there becomes so satisfied with that journey that he will never want to come back. Like this gentleman, if he had actually gone to Golok Vrindavan, he would have been so happy. You think he would have thought, I want to come back to Jhansi? But because of his foolish material attachment, he was thinking like that. But those who go to the spiritual world become so happy and satisfied that one will never want to come to the material world again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, this is a logical point in the flow that we are going to stop here. So after this, Krishna explains, now that he has explained about material world and spiritual world, Krishna is going to summarize the process of the material creation and the spiritual destination in the next few verses. And then Krishna is going to talk about the importance of time of departing the body for various kinds of spiritualists, for the karmis, for the yogis, for the jnanis, and then finally for the bhaktas. Krishna is going to speak about that as well. So that is also another interesting thing. So with this, we will be, hopefully next week, we should be able to complete this particular chapter, 8.17 onwards up to the end. Okay. So we have a few more minutes. So I'm going to open up the floor. If there is any questions, comments, you're welcome. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Hari Bol.
Prabhu, I just want to confirm this point. Based on the text 16, it's mentioned that one who what attains Krishna's abode would never take birth again in this material world. Okay, so basically, uh, as far as uh, as far as we know, that means technically we were not in this in the in in what Krishna's body. Is it because at times it is mentioned that because of our own desire and also envy to what enjoy this material world, that was why this material world was kind of created. How do you reconcile this understanding, Prabhu? Thanks.
Yeah. So I'll give a simple explanation. This is a very detailed subject. I don't want to confuse the audience. So we have discussed this multiple times. So I'll just give a very brief answer since you raised this. So the point is, Prabhupada would explain it simply in a very simple way by saying that once you have had the experience of the material world, yeah, then one is fully convinced that the best thing is to remain in the shelter of the Lord in all situations, all times, all places. Correct. Sometimes one has not had that experience. One thinks maybe it is wonderful there because that free will is always there. This is how Prabhupada would explain it. Yeah. So I think let's keep it simple without getting into too much technicality. So the basic point to understand is that Prabhupada would sometimes say that, once bitten, twice shy. Yeah. Is it that the soul in the spiritual world cannot come back to material world if he wants? Of course he can come back. If he wants to, but he will not want. Correct? Why will a rich man want to be poor? We're not talking about becoming a sannyasi and all that. That's a different thing. That is looking for a higher wealth. But there is no motivation. When one is getting something wonderful, why would one give that up and take up something which is a source of suffering? So it is ignorance of truth or the weakness of the jiva that sometimes he falls prey to this temptation of wanting to be independent of the Lord. So irrespective of what our original state was and all that, that is a long debate. But suffice for us to say, now that we are already here, for us, the point is that having realized the futility of trying to enjoy independent of the Lord. See, this is a very counterintuitive thing, right? Normally we would think, oh, if I try to enjoy on my own, I should be happier and better placed. Why should I be surrendered and serving the Lord? At a superfluous level, that seems a sensible argument, but at a deeper level, it is fallacious for the simple reason that the very nature of the soul, being a part and parcel of the truth, the supreme truth, is to serve the supreme truth. And it is the eternal law of nature that if you are designed for a particular thing, you are best in the situation of existing, performing that function. Yes. For a nut and a bolt, for a bolt, the best place to be is on the nut. That is its perfection. If he says, no, I will be in the gym, so many people are raising up so many, weights. I also kind of resemble a weight. I'm also round. So I will go to the gym. Is he going to add value in the gym? He'll be frustrated. Nobody will look at him. Correct? Because a weight is a weight and a bolt is a bolt. So the perfection of each vastu, substance, is based on its eternal nature, Sanatan Dharma. So the Sanatan Dharma of the soul is to render loving devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But when the soul, because of its infinitesimal position, becomes tempted to try to explore the domain beyond his eternal occupation, his eternal dharma, for whatever reason, from whatever position, no matter how exciting it may look from a distance, when he actually gets there, he can never actually be satisfied because it is never aligned with its true position. In fact, the soul is actually a misfit within the material energy. That is why he suffers. So for us, the simple thing is we will be so convinced after our experience that we will not want to come back. There are some devotees who are so experienced and material life is so miserable. They are so determined. I don't again want to take birth in this material world. That's also a big impetus for spiritual path. Even though we may not have love, sometimes that itself is a big impetus to take shelter of the Lord. Okay, Prabhu, I think the rest we can discuss one-on-one, but I think
Okay,
this class
okay,
this is
Prabhu. Thanks.
sufficient. Thank you.
Thanks, Prabhu.
Yeah. Any other question? Okay, wonderful. So thank you to everyone, and so I'll see you on Saturday, where we'll continue our discussion of the Srimad Bhagavad. And please keep praying to Lord Jagannath. Lord Jagannath is now in Gundicha temple. Yesterday evening, actually, they managed to. The Lord was overnight on the Ratha for the Rath Yatra. Again, somehow, by the Lord's mercy, The pujari, without my asking him, called me and he gave me darshan on the Rath. And somehow that day morning on Jagannath's Rath Yatra day, early morning, I had a dream that I was in Jagannath Puri and I was discussing with the pujari to offer some sweets to Jagannath. And I dreamt that it was Rath Yatra day in my dream. And then after that, I woke up. And then after I woke up, I then realized that actually today is Rath Yatra day. In my dream, I felt that accidentally I was there on a Rath Yatra day in Puri. So then I felt that, maybe the Lord wants me to offer him something. So I asked him. So in the evening on the Rath, yesterday, immediately after Rath Yatra, the Lord was offered Malpua and Rabdi on the Rath. Then next day, the Lord was now taken to put inside the Gundicha temple. He's now in the Gundicha temple. So many of you have sponsored for various Annadan Sevas and various other Sevas. So our Pujari is now directly in charge of worshipping the deities there. The Gundicha temple. He's one of the Daitapatis. He's from the family of Vishwavasu. His descendants, the Daitapatis, who were the original worshippers of Lord Neela Madhav. And they have this seva of being the Anga Sevak of the Lord. So they will be taking care of the Lord exclusively there. So many of you who have sponsored for various sevas, of course, some of you sponsored for some sevas during the Navsar period. So those have been performed and prayers have been done. I've been in touch with the Pujari, and now the upcoming days, the various Annadan sevas will also be done. So please keep praying. It is said the darshan of the Lord in Gundicha is said to be hundreds of times more spiritually fruitful than seeing the Lord on the Ratna Bedi in Jagannath temple. It's very interesting. So, and then after 7 days, actually, there is a return Rath Yatra. Many of us talk about Rath Yatra in this direction, but we forget that the Lord has to come back also, right? Then you have to return back. So the Lord will again have a Rath Yatra. It's usually not so popular. The going is the more exciting part. The returning back is not so exciting, but there are many beautiful pastimes and rituals there also. It is said the return Rath Yatra is said to give much more fruit than the normal Rath Yatra. And then there are some beautiful pastimes there as well. But anyway, this is good time to be absorbed in Jagannath and in Jagannath's pastime, because the Lord in the form of Jagannath is extremely merciful, extremely compassionate. He is with his such big eyes, he is showering so much grace on all the devotees. And the special feature of Jagannath, Krishna as Jagannath, is that he overlooks all the shortcomings and faults of his devotees. Jagannath is extremely accommodative. Even Krishna in his form as Sham Sundar Krishna is not as liberal as Krishna. Of course, the same person. But in the mood of Jagannath, because in the mood of Jagannath, Krishna is intoxicated with the love of the remembrance of the Brajvasis. So in that intoxication, he's in a different intoxication. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in a different intoxication. So it's good to go to intoxicated people when you want to get something done. And when the person is sober, you ask him, he will apply a lot of discrimination. Then it becomes difficult. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Jagannath, they are accessible. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna, who is even more accessible even than Jagannath. So Krishna as Jagannath is even more liberal, and Krishna as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the most liberal. So it's very sweet. And all three of them are Krishna. It's just that he's in different mood in a different form. So because in a different form, in a different mindset, he has a different mood. And when you approach him in that mood, he reciprocates in a different way, correct? Yeah. It's like, even at office or at home, when we want to discuss something important with someone, we are sensitive to their mood, right? Yeah. When the children want to ask for something from the parents, they will not go when the parents are in an irritated mood. They'll go when the parents are very happy. Say, how are you? Are you fine? Yes, Papa. I want something. Can I ask? So when the parent is in a good mood. So like that, Jagannath and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in an ecstatic mood where they are much more approachable. And that's why if you want these beautiful experiences with Jagannath, with the Lord, it is much easier when you approach Lord Jagannath and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Krishna also, it is possible, but for sadhakas, it is rarer. Jagannath, there are many devotees have had many wonderful experiences. And he's much more easily approachable. And the beauty of Jagannath is that, and this is my personal experience, the beauty of Jagannath is he will demand service from you, which means he'll make, he will not wait there that you will come and serve. He will pull you and drag you. That is his affection. That is his compassion. Because that is the mercy. The real mercy of the Lord is that he engages us in his service. So I've seen this repeatedly. Even if we have a little desire, the Lord will amplify it and drag it to the point that he will force us to connect to him to perform that service. This is my very consistent experience with Lord Jagannath. So that is the Lord's special kindness. So the point is that when we have such a very affectionate Lord, who's so loving, so caring, why shouldn't we make a little bit extra effort, try to connect? So much more. We take one step, the Lord will take hundreds of steps. Okay? So please contemplate on this, so that you can also maximize your blessings. Okay, so thank you all very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.